This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to BS Report. Taping this on a Friday. We are running this on a Tuesday. So if anything horrible happened to the Red Sox over the weekend, and I'm not mentioning it now, just assume that I'm still in a hospital somewhere. We have a 30 for 30 premiering tonight with no baseball against it. Finally, we had every 30 for 30 we've had so far in the fall has had baseball against it. Not this one, and I'm happy because I really, really like this one. It's called Big Shot. It's about a guy who somehow bought the New York Islanders, and it's still kind of amazing how it happened, even all these years later when we know all the stuff we know now. I still don't totally understand how it happened, but the director's was with us now. You know him from Entourage. You know him from Rocky V. You know him from 27,000 voiceovers. You've heard his voice on a million different commercials. He's here now. Kevin Connolly, how are you?
How are you, Bill? Thanks for having me.
So we've known each other since Rocky V, which was a very upsetting experience for me.
You were not around in the Rocky V days, Bill.
Well,
you were not around. 1989 that was, long time ago.
I went out of my way to see Rocky V. I drove up to my buddy Jim Grady, one of my oldest friends. We wanted to see Rocky V together. I actually drove to Colgate where he was going to school, and we saw it in like Utica, and we were very upset.
Yeah,
we're very upset
listen,
after.
By
But
the
now
way,
it's like
guys,
it's
guys
underrated
our generation,
now.
you know, the Rocky movies it was a big deal. I'll tell you, the day I got the call that I got that movie was probably, and it's going to sound crazy, probably one of the happiest days of my life.
And why wouldn't it be? You thought it was, assumed it was going to be.
I was 14 years old, whatever, even Rocky IV, which I personally still love. It was a big deal to get that job. So I was just, to say I was happy about that would be an understatement. I mean, I was over the moon. It was amazing.
Well, we learned a valuable lesson from Rocky V, which was don't take your superhero and make him partially brain damaged. I
know. Yeah. It's funny because we had the original director from the original Rocky, John Avildsen.
Yep.
And the story that people don't know was originally Rocky died at the end of Rocky V.
What?
Yeah. I mean, up until we started shooting the movie, he died at the end. And then someone somewhere got cold feet and made them change it to where he lives. And by the way, thank God, because then Rocky Balboa came and say what you want, but it made a bunch of money for everybody. So they ultimately made the right decision. And
gave the series some closure.
Yeah,
and it was good. I was weirdly, I enjoyed Rocky Balboa and was disappointed with it, but when it's on, I watch it. So I think that means it was
by the
success.
way, I liked it. I know it's crazy or whatever, but I liked Rocky Balboa. And it's terrible too because, Tommy Morrison just passed away.
Yeah, I know.
And also Sage Stallone, rest in peace, who's Sylvester Stallone's son, who played his son in Rocky V.
Oh yeah, he passed away. I forgot about that.
Like a couple of years of, a couple bad breaks for that.
Well, tell America who you played in Rocky V, just in case they didn't know.
Chicky Grabowski. I was the schoolyard bully that beat up Rocky Jr. and took his jacket.
Yeah.
But I had a mullet. I was rocking a legitimate mullet.
Wow.
That I grew for the movie.
You grew the mullet for the movie?
For the movie, I will say. But I got the role in like October, and we started shooting in January. So I had 4 months to grow out the complete mullet. I already had kind of a Long Island mullet because it's sort of standard on Long Island in the late 80s. So then I just let it go all the way.
Did you try to model the mullet after any NHL players from the late 80s?
No, I didn't. But my mullet was very, very distinct. If you look at some stills, I liked them all. I don't even know that I could do that anymore. It was a good mullet.
Your 30 for 30 is about John Spano, who amazingly bought the Islanders in the mid-'90s when you could do things like this before computers really went to another level and things like this became impossible. And it's amazing. I actually, we always look at 30 for 30s. We think like, would this story be, is it a documentary? Is it a short? Is it a sports movie? Like what? Usually they kind of fall in one of those three places. This one I feel like also could have been a sports movie. I'm glad it's a documentary, but it easily really could have been a sports movie, right?
Listen, it's something that we would like to maybe eventually down the road even look at that as a possibility. You know, it could be a good, because it's more than a sports. It's really a story. There's a business angle to it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're not if you're a hockey fan, you're going to love it. If you're a sports fan, you're going to love it. But if you're not, even if you're not any of those, I still think if you're involved in any sort of corporate sort of business, it would have to be somewhat interesting too, to kind of wrap your head around the things that this guy did and get as far down the road as he got. And like you said, I don't know that happens today with, those were the days of faxes and what have you. Nowadays, Google would have blown him wide open, But the truth is, this guy walked into Fleet Bank of Boston with a fake piece of paper and took out an $80 million loan.
Right.
And they gave it to him.
There's a little bit of an element of Catch Me If You Can with DiCaprio.
Right.
It really could be a sports movie. I think it's one of the best 30 for 30s we've done. I really liked it. And
thank you very much.
It was one of those stories that I knew, and I knew how it ended, but I had no idea how insane it was. And also, he looks just like, from the video and the snapshot pictures and stuff, he looks exactly how you would want this guy to look. Like, he's kind of sneaky. There's something, every picture about him, it seems like there's more going on behind his eyes. You know what I mean?
Well, too, the other thing, like on Twitter or what I've seen, people have said to me, and not in a negative way, but people have said to me, so if I read all the articles when it happened, like, am I going to learn anything new in this documentary? And to me, the answer is yes, very much so. I mean, I think there's a lot in the movie, just sort of the mindset of this guy who really ultimately, I believe in my heart of hearts, was not driven by greed. I believe that he really he got intoxicated, that when he got in there and people were chanting his name and he would walk into a restaurant and get a standing ovation, he was intoxicating, and then he was hooking up with girls that were out of his league, and that's what really drove him. It wasn't a money thing. He was driven by the fame and the attention, and he just could not get enough of it, and he openly admits that.
Yeah, there's a little touch of like Scarface when things start going well for Tony Montana. There's a little touch of Limitless with Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
It's like he's got these superpowers and girls coming at him left and right. And also you have this hockey team involved.
Right.
And, one of the things I liked about this documentary that I think gets swept under the rug a little is those 4 straight Islander cups. You just swept under the rug completely historically. Like, nobody even really talks about it. I just remember those teams because, I love the Bruins back then. And we had a bloodbath, I'm going to say 1980, when O'Reilly and Clark Gillies fought pretty much every game in the series.
Yeah.
And it was just one of my great childhood memories, was just these guys, game after game, they just decided to go at it. And Gillies pretty much whooped them every time.
It's funny too. My brother and I were talking about that the other day, and obviously we're diehard Islanders and diehard, Gillies fans. I mean, I have a French bulldog named Gillies.
Right.
Okay? My dog is named Gillies.
Right.
So that's how much I like Clark Gillies. But my brother and I were talking. We were watching YouTube clips, and those were not no-brainer fights. O'Reilly held his own pretty well.
Oh yeah, he would, his game plan.
I mean, they
was
were
just
heavyweight battles.
Oh yeah,
They were worthy adversaries.
He just would throw these big sweeping left and right hooks and just hope to hit, but then he would leave himself open to great punishment. So he was always one of the best fighters.
He was just a tough SOB, plain and simple.
The Islanders also had Gary Howitt, who was one of the greats for a while for fighters, and then
and Bobby Nystrom was a tough guy.
Nystrom was terrifying. Nystrom to me is the unsung great fighter of that whole era, because he just destroyed everybody, and nobody really seemed like they wanted to mess with him either. It's
funny. We did an interview with Nystrom and Gillies for the movie, and I interviewed them for 4 hours. Of course, there's only 2 minutes of it made the movie, but some of the raw footage of those guys talking about that. And Clark Gillies talks about how Nystrom would hand out before the game, would hand out the fighting assignments.
Right.
Nystrom was like the captain of who fought who. All right, Clarkie, you're going to take this guy. I'm going to take so-and-so. You're going to, they would actually talk about it, and Nystrom would assign opponents to people.
It was a great era. There were no helmets because nobody was really skating that fast that they were going to get hurt.
Right.
And you had a lot of plotters on every team, and everybody fought, and maybe you had like the one or two Europeans, and that's about it. Every team had the one or two guys who wouldn't scrap, and you always kind of secretly resented them. Like we had Peter McNabb who couldn't fight, and it always just drive me crazy that he would never drop the gloves. But
Bossy was never throwing his gloves.
Bossy was your guy. No, Bossy, everybody had to stick up for him. Trotty had never really fought, but you kind of always had the feeling if he had to, he would be able to handle himself.
Right.
But those were great Islanders teams, and I loved.
Yeah, and people, again, it's in the movie, but they're the last pro of the major sports, the last four major sports, the last pro team to win 4 in a row.
Yeah.
The Yankees came close. The Yankees should have done it. That's for sure. The Yankees came to within an out of winning 4 in a row, and the Lakers came close. But other than that, nobody else has done it ever since then. They're the last pro team to win 4 in a row.
And the last one was against...
The way it is, it's hard to repeat. Never mind 4 in a row, 19 straight playoff series. And like I said, there's that thing in the movie with the current format, under that format, the Islanders would have won 9 cups in a row and lost in the finals of the 10th.
Wow.
I mean, that Canadian team that won 5 in a row only had to win, it's like baseball is. There's just the league championship series and then the final.
And then the last cup was against Gretzky's Oiler team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Which I don't know if the Islanders were even favored in that.
No, they were heavy underdogs. I mean, and that's what Gretzky said, is like they were just too confident. They just went in there too confident and had to get beat before they could come back and win.
Plus, you had 1980 U.S. Olympian Ken Moore on that team.
Yep, and then he went on from that team and went on and won 4 cups in a row, and 2 years later he was out of the league.
Wow.
How's that for a career?
It's a great run, though.
Yeah, no kidding.
Really so the Islanders, so they peaked then, falls apart a little bit. It's not really a catastrophe until the early 90s, right?
Well, also, too, because LaFontaine came around.
Right, so you had a nice little resurgence.
So they were good in the late 80s, 93, people forget, they knocked off, the Penguins won 91-92. And the Islanders knocked them off in Game 7 in 93. The Islanders made it to the conference finals in 93. So they were still good. I mean, they were right there in 93. And then in 94, they got swept by the Rangers in the first round. And from that game, from that day on, it was a straight shot downhill. That was it. The playoff loss in 94 sent the Islanders into the toilet. That was it.
So at what point do you start worrying that this team might move?
Well, there was the Spano era, I mean, and you would hear these things. It was like there was at one point, the Islanders were like one team flying, the only team in the league flying commercial,
Wow.
to away games. Imagine that, it's like professional athletes having to check their equipment and, get on an American Airlines flight to Boston to play the Bruins.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And it's like these guys are pros. It's like that's the whole idea of becoming pro, and that's why I'm a supporter of the move to Brooklyn. As much as I hate to see them leave Long Island, I mean, you got a group of guys, Tavares, even now you watch this guy, the guy is for sure one of the top 3-4 players on the planet, and he deserves to have a locker room.
Yeah.
He deserves a locker room with a shower that works, And these guys, Garth, these guys have paid their dues. If I were Charles Long, I would have been gone a long time ago. And they've hung in there, and now it's time for them to go and be treated like professionals. And Nassau County ran them out of town.
Right. You got involved. I remember I was watching at least one hockey draft where you were involved. Like you went up on the stage.
I did. I drafted a guy. By the way, my guy that I drafted is awesome. He's on the team.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's playing this year. Brock Nelson.
Right.
Is the guy that I drafted. That was amazing. That was that was just a dream come true for me. I thought
they embraced you.
Charles Long was like, "You want to go up and make it?" I was like, "No," because I knew he was going to catch a lot of heat for it, and he did, and so did I, and But it was amazing. But I'm just glad that my guy that I drafted is going to be in the NHL. He's going to have a career in the NHL. He's real good.
So when you approach this movie and you're going to direct it, have you ever done a documentary like this before? I'm guessing
I've never done a documentary before.
Never done it? Okay.
No.
So what was your process? What were you thinking? What were you modeling this after?
I'll tell you, first of all, I was such a fan of the 30 for 30 series. So I was a little nervous because the truth be told, the bar is high. They're high quality movies. Like never ever have I mentioned 30 for 30 to somebody, and every single time I mention it to them, they're like, oh, they love it, and they rattle off their favorite one. And everybody that has any interest in sports holds 30 for 30 up in the most prestigious. It's just the bar is incredibly high. So
well, that's nice to hear.
I felt
Thank you.
pressure to like live up to the sort of how high the bar has been set. So there was that, and also I'll admit it was a little more work. I kind of had ideas of like me sitting in like a cool air conditioned room, like cutting together old Islander highlights. But it was a lot. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, and the John aspect of it was exhausting and emotionally taxing and difficult because he didn't want to do the movie. Really, really, really didn't want to do the movie. In fact, if I didn't have the 30 for 30 banner, so to speak, behind me, he wouldn't have. That was the final straw that broke the camel's back for him, that made him do the movie, was he could look and say, hey, look, these guys do a high quality. They do high quality. They have, there's a street credibility to it. It's a prestigious series, and he gets to know what it's going to look like. And by the way, if there was going to be a movie about it, there'd be no better forum for it. I mean, if they did a Dateline episode, it would have been a Hatchet piece. At least as a 30 for 30, we were able to hear his side of the story because I didn't want to take a journalistic approach to it.
Well, let's be honest. The fact that you're a celebrity and we know what he's like, it was probably appealing to him, right? To sit down and be interviewed by you.
I think there was a little bit of that. I think he liked our nights out in New York. Talk about it.
So you roped him in and you got great interviews. And this is one of those that if we don't get the interviews with him, I don't know if it works. I mean, It's certainly not the same documentary. It would have been okay. It wouldn't have been the same.
Well, in hindsight, this is a bad, because this is a bad, analogy because it really was so good. But it's like one of my favorite 30 for 30s is Catching Hell.
Yep.
Imagine Bartman in that interview. Imagine an interview with Bartman in that movie. That's the best one ever made.
Believe me, we spent a lot of time imagining it. And,
that's what I'm saying. It was so good as it was, but you put Bartman in there, forget about it. It's like it's just on another planet. So it's still one of my favorites. But so it's like, look, I was going to move forward, and I also told John this. I said, John, and who knows whether or not ESPN and you guys would have decided not to want to do it without him. But as far as I was concerned, I told John, I'm doing this movie with you or without you. So you're either in or you're not, because I'm going to tell the story. So you can be a part of it and tell your side of the story, or we can talk to people and have them speak for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes,
but in hindsight, you had to have them.
Well, but sometimes people listen to that plea and they still say screw it. And I think people really regret after the fact when they see what the finished product is that they weren't involved.
Right.
I know for a fact I can think of.
You've got to imagine that Bartman wishes he sat down for an interview.
Yeah, or well, he might be the one. I don't know. He's kind of in hiding. I'm not positive about him. There's been other ones. Like, I guarantee Chris Webber saw the Fab Five documentary, and once he saw the whole thing and it felt weird, so weird that he wasn't in it, I guarantee he felt stupid that he wasn't in there.
Well, also now, I think now the series is popular. I mean, again, I don't want to get you going on Entourage. You know how you feel about the show.
No. I want to talk about that.
But this was the same thing with Entourage. Like the first year when we were out trying to get cameos, everybody was like, well, wait, what? I don't get it. What is this? People didn't want to do it, but once they see it and they know what it is, then they go, oh, okay. Then we had kind of people lining up. I think Chris Webber, now knowing when you look at these 30-30s, for him to not do that is ridiculous. He totally wishes he did it. Believe me.
Yeah.
I bet anything he's sorry he didn't do that.
And the other thing with the 30 for 30s that I think these people forget is they're not on once. It's not like they disappear. Like this Spano documentary will probably be on 100 times on all three of the channels, you know,
right.
And it's on and you're flipping channels and it's 2:30 in the morning and there it is, or whatever. They're on ABC one day at 4 in the afternoon, there it is. And I think that makes you start thinking, damn, I wish maybe I should have done that interview. Like, how hard would that have been?
Hey, listen, a couple of years ago, before I was even involved, somebody for Christmas or something got me a 30 for 30 box set of the first, volume one, as a present. I have them sitting on my shelf. You know what I mean? They're there, so they don't go away. That's for sure.
When, after you did Rocky V and you made a go at it as an actor, you ended up in all of those circles with the famous, with Leo was in there and Tobey Maguire. Like, you were in that crew, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're brothers, we're best friends, all of us.
So you're a struggling actor.
Yeah.
Leo's starting to get roles. Tobey Maguire's trying to get roles, I'm guessing?
Well, Leo was on Growing Pains.
Yeah, I remember.
So he had a job, which is more than most of us had at that point. And then, when Leo kind of popped, so to speak, to say that it happened overnight would be almost an understatement. It's like nothing happens overnight. He became super successful over the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
He was like, he literally exploded.
All of a sudden he was with Johnny Depp and De Niro.
It was more strange. I mean, we were all, very supportive because it certainly never, one person's success has nothing to do with another's. I never felt like that hurt my chances of success down the road. Never,
right.
He's the greatest guy in the world. So we were all very happy for him. And then the really strange thing was when Toby was you blink your eyes and now Toby was Spider-Man. And that was strange. To walk onto the Sony lot and walk into Toby's trailer and he's wearing a spider suit was a bit surreal.
At what point in this whole process did the red rope start flying up every time they saw you guys walking in a club?
Well, I mean, I think pretty early on, when Leo started to pop, we were out running around and the ropes opened pretty quickly right around there.
Was there a rival crew that you guys were sizing up?
Yeah, I mean, there was other groups of actor types out there that were, I don't know that it would be. It's funny because you rivalries. You think of like tough guys, like rival actor gangs. There's not a lot of danger flying around.
Like Anchorman. It's like an Anchorman with the rival announcing crews and the gang fight.
It's funny. Like there was certainly no shootouts. That's for sure.
So you're staring across the club at Keanu Reeves and his group, and you're like, "Look at that guy! He's looking at me."
Yeah, no, the tension was pretty was nothing that we couldn't handle. That's for sure.
But then Leo does Titanic and becomes like the most famous actor in America.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I mean, and by the way, like that sort of thing that happened to Leo, like happens once every 20 years. I mean, that was became like a. It was just bizarre. I mean, he was like internationally famous. Like people were crazy. It was strange to be witness to that. I had a front row seat to that, and it was weird. Leo's one of the most painfully normal dudes that I know. So strangely so that you'd be you'd be shocked at how normal he is. So for him, it was weird because he's such a normal guy. So him watching all that happening around him was just certainly a learning experience for all of us.
I thought it was interesting. He almost did Boogie Nights, and he did Titanic instead. If he does Boogie Nights, his whole career is different. But then also Mark Wahlberg's whole career might be different. And
totally.
It's like one of those sports what-ifs, right?
There's a million stories like that. I mean, Leo was almost at one point going to do Primal Fear, and then Ed Norton did it. And you know what I mean? So when people passing on jobs launches other people's careers. It's just part of the chain, and it's kind of like that. There's a million examples of it, and thank God. I mean, Ed Norton is one of the great actors.
Yeah,
and that was his big break.
Did you have one role that was out there that somebody else got, and you feel like your whole career is different if you had gotten it?
there were a few, not in a good way. Like there was a few things, a few like roles early on as a kid that I missed out on. That in hindsight, I think, oh, thank God. I mean, it certainly was for me. The timing could not have worked out better because by the time Entourage came around, I was in my late 20s, so I was sort of. Well, we all went a little wild when the show first went on. By the time like the show was kind of coming to an end and all that sort of stuff, I was sort of very settled in and kind of, I don't know, I think had that show come, I don't know that I would have been able to handle it as well if I were 21.
Oh, that's interesting. What would
I don't
happen?
know that show would have been good for me at 21.
What would have happened?
Well, who knows? I mean, I was just more mature. I was more prepared. I had seen more things. At 21, who knows? It's a dangerous thing to have that happen to a younger person,
Yeah, I think about this a lot with like child actors and people who become famous before 25, and it really doesn't seem like there's a ton of upside.
Right, exactly. That's why I was glad, and even by the way, financially, just being smarter financially, like who knows if I would have been. I feel like I like to think I'm pretty responsible with money. I don't know that I would have been as responsible at 21. So.
Right. Did you get
timing,
to know?
It can be tricky for that to happen to people when they're young. So for me, the timing of it
was Wahlberg in like floating around in that circle in the 90s? Because eventually his production company ended up doing Entourage.
Yeah, no. I've been friends. I met Mark when Mark and Leo did Basketball Diaries together.
Right.
So that's how I knew Mark. That's how I knew Mark, and ironically, ultimately ended up on the show because I knew him, and that was. That was how I ended up doing it. But, the show is based on, those characters on the show all exist in Mark's life. Yep. Which is kind of funny to meet the guys. There's a real E who is still, he's with Mark right now as we speak. Wherever Mark is doing whatever he's doing, E is standing with him within 10 feet of him, guaranteed.
I saw Mark's new movie that's coming out.
Which one?
The one that Peter Berg did.
Okay, by the way, that guy went to my high school. Michael Murphy went to my high school. We went to the same high school. Can you believe that?
Wow.
He's a Long Island guy. It's funny, too, because people are like, oh, you must be, the pride and joy of your town. I'm like, no, actually, another guy from our town they named the Battleship after.
Right.
He firmly holds that title. But, yeah, the character that I believe Taylor Klitsch plays. He plays Michael Murphy, who is a Long Island guy. And, he graduated high school a couple years. He was younger than me. He graduated high school a couple years after I did.
It's an excellent movie. And Wahlberg's actually terrific in it. And
Pete Berg's a hell of a director, too.
Yeah, I think this is his best movie. I really do. It's a really good one. It's one of those movies you sit in your seat after and you don't know what to do.
Well, it's funny, too, because because this guy was from our hometown, there was, that was obviously a huge story, but of course you're hearing it through the grapevine.
Right.
You knew he got the Medal of Honor, but like sort of what was happening was like, okay, but then the book came out and it was like, wow, this guy really, by all accounts, this guy really was the hero. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but isn't that sort of the case?
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it.
Right, I don't want to spoil it, but it's like, exactly. So
it's one of those movies, I didn't even know what it was about. I thought it was about a hiking trip. I didn't know it was about what it's about. And I think it's one of those less you know, the better. But just be prepared. It's not a comedy.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I know the story through like the local grapevine. So I'm curious. I can't wait to see it.
So when you got Entourage, what was the process there? Is because you knew Wahlberg? Did they think you were the right guy for the part? How did that work?
Yeah, they thought I was the right guy for the part. I was at the time. Did you ever see the movie Alpha Dog?
Yeah.
Okay, I was the director. I was the original director of Alpha Dog.
Really?
Yeah.
What
I was
happened?
on the movie for a couple of years, developing the script and working on it. Nick Cassavetes was writing it, and I was going to direct it. And we got hung up on some stuff, and I ultimately ended up deciding to do Entourage, and then Nick took over the reins and went on to make Alpha Dog.
So that's a pretty interesting fork in the road moment, along the lines of what we were discussing earlier.
The difference is too, like Nick's a big director, So Nick, had more money and, more ability to get bigger stars. Like my version of it would have been far more independent and much more of an independent version of the movie. But I mean, in hindsight, thank God, for me, like Nick and I laugh about it. It's like, thank God because at the time too, you have to understand Entourage was a pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hindsight is 20/20. It's like, yeah, of course I should have done it. But at the time, it's just a pilot, and they make pilots. I've done 20 pilots in my life, and most of them don't go. So it was a bit of a roll of the dice, but it was HBO, and it was a place I wanted to be, so I kind of took a chance on that one and ended up paying off. So.
Season 1 Entourage, I actually think now is underrated because you think about just that territory of trying to capture what a star's life is like.
Right.
And I really think that's why so many people got so emotionally invested in the show. I include myself. It was like you guys, in Risky Business, like the glass egg.
Right.
It was like you had this glass egg. It was like almost like the perfect idea. And I think everybody was rooting for the show to just be executed perfectly. And it got graded on a curve to some degree because Season 1 Entourage, in retrospect, was really good. Those episodes are enjoyable. And I remember I wrote a column at the end of the season about how I was disappointed in it, but yet I still devoured every episode and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. I do feel like there was, at least in those first couple seasons, there was a little bit of a grading of a curve aspect. Did you guys feel that?
Well, yeah, we did. And also, too, I mean, we always took this as a compliment, it was like a good thing and it was a bad thing, but it was like every season, we got reviewed like as if we were a new movie,
Yeah.
And it's hard because, there are some people, there's two trains of thought. It's like, if in season 7, Turtle is still sitting there smoking weed, there's the part of the people that said, there's half the people that are like, oh, this is ridiculous. These characters don't evolve. There's that. And then when you evolve the characters, people are mad that the characters are evolved. You know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't like, it just felt like every season we did, we faced a new, like, force of critics where it's like, come on, was season 7 of like Friends or whatever? It's like, normally you review a show in the beginning, people say their piece, and then it goes on. It's like, we sort of were re-reviewed like we were new every season. There was like blogs and this and that. It was always a rough time of the year because It was like, look, and if the critics, whatever. I mean, we got nominated for 6 Emmys in a row. I mean, it's like we were in there, we were in the mix. Like a lot of shows don't do that. I mean, we're trying to make a movie. There had to be some group of people that liked us or appreciated us, but it did feel a lot of times like we were heavily criticized, or with the writing or the arc of the season or whatever. But it's hard to do 8 years of a show and continue the arc and evolve characters and keep everybody involved. It's not an easy thing to do. Not a lot of people have been successful at it. So.
And I think, especially with a show like that, and I include myself as one of those people, there's people who are watching TV shows and they're always, oh, why didn't they do that? Oh, they should have done this. Oh, why didn't that character? And it's like it's almost the same thing like you're criticizing an NFL coach who, didn't go for it on 4th and 1 or whatever. And I do feel like what's interesting about that show, and I think about it now, is how invested people were for it to be good and how disappointed they were if they felt like it wasn't.
People took it very seriously.
They really did.
Very seriously. People were mad if, their character or whatever. I mean, people would take things personally, and people would say it on the street or actually think that you're one of these characters, and it's like, are you kidding me? People would, someone would like approach me out somewhere about complaining. I would say, buddy, are you kidding? Do you think are we on the show right now or something? My name's Kevin.
Right.
And I'm an actor on the show. Why are you talking to me about something that I said in an episode? Like, what are you talking about?
My wife used to do the same thing with Sex and the City, and she was so upset when Carrie Bradshaw, after Mr. Big got married, Carrie Bradshaw then started having an affair with Mr. Big, And she was so upset
Yeah.
at Carrie Bradshaw that that character would do that, and it betrayed the character. And why did they do that? I could never look at her the same way. And I was like, it's a TV
it really
show,
is pretty
right?
crazy. And it was good because people. You know what's funny? Like, do you remember the Dom storyline?
Yeah.
Okay, now, first of all, Dominic is a tremendous actor. I mean, he's on Boardwalk Empire. I mean, the guy's a great actor. You know, people didn't, when he came on and he sort of kind of messed with the balance of power, and he, punched Turtle in the arm and started driving the car, and he kind of bullied us around. People hated him.
Right.
People were walking up to him on the street and saying stuff to him on the street. And he's like, you know what I mean? People took it so people were protective of the guys and didn't like that this new character came in and, and punched Turtle in the arm and was calling E names and, wouldn't let drama cook, people really were sort of protective of it.
I think my one big regret about the show, I love in the first season, there was a character that was obviously based on Britney Spears, but you couldn't say that. It was a singer who claimed to be a virgin, but she wasn't. Wait, remember?
That's Leighton Meester.
It turned out to be Leighton Meester, right. And it was obviously Britney Spears, but it wasn't. But then as the show evolved over the next 6 seasons, I think they just would have had Britney Spears play the role and not instead. I really liked how, it was a good way to kind of skewer some people in Hollywood, but then it almost like the show becomes too popular and then you feel bad and you can't. So you got to go in the other direction. Now you have cameos. Like, don't you feel like it would have been a different show if everybody just said, screw the cameos. We're going all fake, and you have to figure out what's real and what's not real. You understand what my point is?
Yeah, no, it was, and it just became, it just strangely, the cameos really did become, and by the way, you're not alone. There are people that felt that, but also too, for us, it added the idea of a random, like the idea of us showing up to Eric Roberts' house to buy mushrooms is just so random.
Right.
So a lot of times, there were some huge people that couldn't get the job, but yet Gary Busey did 5 episodes.
Well, some of the cameos really worked well, but I'm sure by season 4, you must have had people left and right pitching you to get on the show. And hey, can I do a cameo? Blah blah blah.
Literally, we could have had anybody that we could have had almost anybody that we wanted. It was just a matter of scheduling, and it really funny. The show really struck a note with athletes. I think athletes really related to it.
Because you tapped into that. Reasons, I think. Yeah, you tapped into that lifestyle. And that's the thing is the show hasn't been on the air now for 2.5 years. And what's the show that's tapped into that since? Like, it just doesn't exist, you know? And I think what people, especially people in Los Angeles who know that world, it's almost like watching, ER with my stepmother, who's a doctor, and she's picking apart every ER scene. Oh, that would never happen. Oh, they never had the scalpel like that. And people in LA would watch Entourage that way. But if you're in Kansas City, this is a whole new world. You don't have no idea what it's like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what else is funny too? And again, this is one of those things where, Entourage has become this thing where when people are pitching other shows, it's always like in the mix. It's like, it's Entourage meets.
Right.
So that's always like people can't even really quite put their finger on what part of Entourage. It's like, it's Entourage meets Sex in the City meets, 2.5 Men. You know what I mean? Like it's always part thrown in there as, we did capture some sort of, because prior to that, shows about Hollywood were just known to not work. Right. So for whatever reason, ours just caught on and it's been on the show, but the appetite for the movie is there. And now granted, I don't think it's for everybody, but I think that there's an audience out there that wouldn't miss it. Like they're going to see it. They're going to hate it. Some are going to love it. Some are going to hate it. But even the people that are going in there to hate it are still going to go in there.
I disagree. The people who are going to go are going to people who like the franchise. Nobody's going to go pay $15 to get mad at the Entourage movie. Like what'll happen is they'll pay-per-view it and get mad at it. But I think in the theater, it'll be on the fans.
Like at some point, if you ever watch the show, you're going to see the movie, whether you go see it in the movies or if you catch it on iTunes.
1,000%.
Right.
1,000%.
Like the biggest critic that hates it will watch it in some form.
It was always an easy watch, which was if I had trouble with the season, I always was still watching every episode. You know what I mean? And it was.
I have shows like that. I have shows like that now where it's like, okay, this isn't my favorite season. I'm not really liking the storyline of this arc, but you just watch it anyway. Yeah. You know?
I think
you
the
know
biggest
that at
mistake,
any second it could, it picks up again and you like what's going on.
The biggest mistake, I would never have actually canceled the show. I would almost like graduated Vince and the crew and brought in an entirely new crew.
Really?
And just kept it going.
By the way, that would have been the
black.
only way to do it because the show just got so expensive that they couldn't do it anymore. You have to understand, like you take if you look at take a sitcom, for example, you're on a soundstage with like the walls and the cameras are there and it's contained. We're 9, 10, 11, 12, sometimes 16 locations an episode.
Yeah.
It's the 8th year of the show. All the actors are getting paid too much money. You got guys that work on the show 1 day a week making too much money. And the show got so expensive that once it's syndicated, it was just money that they were spending. There was no reason for them. It had already reached the goal and that was it. So it really should be interesting to see what happens with the movie. We'll see.
I would have kept the show going, and I would have had like one of those up and coming hip hop stars who can also act.
Right.
And his whole crew, and just gone total African American experience. Basically, this Vince, but the black version of it, and tried that for you. I wonder if they would have been
able to kind of sort of spin that off some way. That's actually a great idea.
It would have worked. Everybody would have at least watched the first episode.
Right.
So if you made the first episode good, then you keep all those people. But if it's like Ari's got a new client, and it's this guy, and then boom, it would have worked. So is the movie happening or not? Because Mark Wahlberg got really mad about it recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, by the way, it's funny. 1 million people sent me that, and I know Mark. Like, Mark is a guy. Mark's got a great life. Mark is super, super, super happy, and I know him, and I know he's just like, you know what I mean? He doesn't mean that. Listen, the Entourage negotiation. There's like this thing that there's like some problem. It's not a matter of greed. It's a matter of people wanting different things. If that makes any sense. It's not somebody's asking for so much money. It's like this person's more concerned about this thing, and then just people just have different concerns that they want to straighten out. So it's really just aligning everybody. It's really gotten blown way out of proportion, as if there's some like big, huge money, discrepancy, and that's just not the case. It's just lining everybody up. And truth be told, people are busy. That's the other thing. There's scheduling, and it's like I certainly am not available to do anything until December. Jeremy's doing his new show, Mr. Selfridge. Jerry's all over the place. Guys are busy. So it's just a matter of getting the dates right, and then signing everybody's deals, because we were all under contract and now we're not. So it's just putting everybody back together, and it takes a little time. Somehow that gets turned into this thing that there's like some war going on, and there's really not.
And you left out the biggest reason why this can't happen, because you're doing the voices for 17,000 different commercials.
Oh God, yeah, I did. I've been doing the voiceover for Best Buy for a long time, and it's great. It's weird. I've been doing it for 5 years, but for whatever reason, just recently people started to put it together. I don't know why. It's funny, but yeah, it's my fifth year. And I tag their commercials. And by the way, it is the greatest job in the history of the world.
I was going to say.
And it's a contract year, so I'm looking to get re-signed. I feel like an athlete. I'm hoping to get re-signed.
Is it just Best Buy? I feel like you're in more commercials. I feel like I've heard you for cars too.
No, just Best Buy. They're my brand.
You have a sound alike. You better be diligent.
That's what I said. Somebody's trying to knock me off. I've heard that a couple times.
What about directing?
Yeah, I directed. I actually directed a couple episodes of Entourage. Obviously, I did Big Shot. I just finished a movie called Dear Eleanor, which is it's something that would be hard to imagine coming from me, but it's about two 15-year-old girls in 1962 that steal their mother's car and drive cross country to meet Eleanor Roosevelt. So it's kind of a coming of age story.
That does not sound like Entourage.
It is not like Entourage. It's very PG. So that's really sort of where I spend the majority of my time now with that and the TV show and just putting the final touches on Big Shot, which is getting the word out there. And I just want people to. It's weird because you work so hard on something. I just want people to see it. I want people to give it a shot. And I hope people like it. I know not everybody's gonna like it. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. You're gonna have your critics, but I'm used to that. And now just hope for the best. I just can't wait to watch it on TV. I have DVDs and all that kind of stuff, but I want to sit and watch it. I have it DVR'd, and I want to come home from work that night, and I want to watch it with the commercials. I just want to watch it on television.
And what you'll find is the commercials actually help. Almost every time. It gives you a little bit of a break. You get to regroup a little bit. Sometimes, especially I think the two Escobars was a good example of one that just 2 hours of it was really dense and just grueling. But the commercials kind of helped you take a breath. And I think this will be the case for this too.
Well, the two Escobars is my favorite 30 for 30 ever, and that and Catching Hell are my two favorites. But two Escobars is just stories. The whole thing is just nuts.
Yeah.
But I even No Mas. I liked No Mas.
Good.
Of course, it's funny because you're torn because it's like, oh God, another great one. Of course, mine has to come on next, so I can't mind come on after. You have kind of mixed emotions. I'm a team player. I want the brand to do well, but I hope that's not a tough act to follow because that certainly it just reminds me of my it's another sort of story that brings me back to my childhood, and I can just remember my dad and my uncles, and I can just remember everybody going nuts. I remember the pandemonium of No Mas and being young and not really understanding what it was, but I just remember everybody just up in arms and crazy and just conversations for days. It was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So it was nice to. I really enjoyed it. It would have been nice to hear him spill the beans, but he's hard-headed, that's for sure.
We put him in the position, but it just wouldn't happen.
He just wasn't going to do it, right?
We didn't mention that Eric Murphy got drafted by the Bulls this year.
I know. Believe me. Are you kidding? My Twitter. Are you kidding? Do you know what happened to me on Twitter? And at first, it took me. I didn't understand what people were talking about. My Twitter feed starts blowing up with all these people, and I'm like, "What is everybody talking about?" Then it's like, "Oh, okay, it dawned on me."
I was proud of myself.
Tweet.
I was doing the draft, and we were at it was the 3.5 hour mark or something. So we were pretty groggy, and then that happened, and just immediately we kind of woke up and just started making Entourage jokes.
Yeah, I know. That's when all the calls started coming in.
Yeah.
Good shout out. I'm like, what is everybody talking about? Because that's what it was. Because it was late. It was it was sort of post draft, but it was funny. I was like, oh God, that's funny.
Yeah. People are like, you guys are losing energy in the second round. It's like, I don't know who half these guys are. I'm just excited if I have even one sentence opinion on anybody who's getting drafted. And then all of a sudden, magically, Eric Murphy. So that was good. It carried us.
It was funny. I did Olbermann yesterday. Yeah. And by the way, the new downtown LA Live Sports Center thing, it's amazing. I mean, any sports fan, you walk in there, it's like being at Disneyland. It's like, whoa.
Right. Yeah.
It's just I don't know, it's like stepping into your, Sports Center is so personal because it's in your face all night long. It's in your bed, literally,
Yep.
So to walk in there, but when I was coming through, I saw the guys, Neil Everett. So I had a quick chat with Neil Everett. So I got home last night and I'm watching Sports Center, and lo and behold, when they show the Islander highlights, they gave me a shout out on Sports Center,
Well, that's
the Oilers in Nassau Coliseum to play the Islanders. Kevin Connolly was here today doing Olbermann. He's on Entourage. But anytime you get a Sports Center shout out, you get 800 phone calls. I literally everybody called me, dude. They're talking about you on Sports Center. So
that's great. Yeah, we were going to do this podcast in person, but we had changed our studio around for the Bill and Jalen NBA preview. That's probably never going to end. We're just going to keep filming these for the rest of our lives. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that in person, but that's where our studio is. Kevin Connolly.
I saw where I took the tour and I saw your little setup that you guys got going on there. What a cool place to go to work.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And our little podcast studio used to be an electrical closet, and we turned it into a nice little place, a nice little happy podcast place.
You know what's
Connolly.
funny? Yesterday I did the Overman yesterday. I mean, you're a pro at this, obviously, but it was my first interview with an earwig. I never did that before. I've done everything.
Oh, my God.
I just, it was strange because you're looking at the monitor and you're hearing it, and it's kind of like you're at the gym listening to your kind of iPod, you know?
Yep.
It definitely takes a little getting used to. It's not easy.
I've done probably 10 PTIs like that, and I just hated it because first of all, you're in a half-second delay.
Right.
So if, like, I'm doing it with Wilbon, and he does his 40 seconds, and then I do mine, and then we're trying to interrupt each other, but I can hear his voice before I see his lips.
That was happening to me yesterday, and I was like, oh, man, this is so weird. This just takes – you just got to do it a few times.
You do, but you never totally get used to it, but you figure out, like, to just react to what you're hearing in your ear and just use what's on the screen as, like, cues.
And the second delay was happening because even though I'm not Italian, I didn't realize I'm watching the interview last night. I'm animated, so I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the thing, and I can see my hands moving, and then I'm like, okay, wow, this is a delay. I did that a couple seconds ago.
Right.
You know, so it took a little bit of getting used to, but I mean, I feel like I could see it when I was watching the interview last night. I was like, oh God.
At some point they'll have the technology to,
but it takes some getting used to.
At some point they'll have the technology to make it like dead even, but no time soon. Hey, so 8 p.m. ESPN Tuesday, Big Shot, directed by Kevin Connolly. No baseball going against it, thank God.
Thank goodness.
No basketball. You got a nice little spotlight on this one, and you deserve it. It's really good. Proud to be involved with this one.
Thank you for your support, too. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Congratulations. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you soon.
All right, Bill. See ya.
Target the sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.